What's poppin', everyone? Welcome back to the most trusted #1 source of tech news on the whole entire, literally, internet. We're gonna do another double I SWI, formerly known as II SWI, formerly known as Is It Still Worth It? If you haven't caught up with the name, basically, just watch my other videos, it'll make more sense. Now, we're going to be talking about a phone that is pretty much dear to my heart. It is the first iPhone that I used as a main phone. It wasn't my first iPhone I ever owned, but it's one that means a lot to me. I had a lot of adventures with it. I had a lot of dates with it. I was gonna propose to it, but bro, I realized she wasn't the one. Then I moved on to the 6S Plus, but we're gonna be talking about the predecessor to that, which was the iPhone 6 Plus, and pretty much talking about how it holds up in 2019, how it's going to hold up in the future, a little bit about it, and seeing if it's still worth it, whether it's II SWI certified or not for me, alright? Now, one thing I commonly do is before looking forward and talking about the 2019 review, kind of looking back and seeing everything that's changed within the last year. Pretty common stuff. Now, if you see my last video, skip forward like 50 seconds. If you're interested though, stay tuned. I don't want you to skip this because it's very important. The iPhone 6 Plus came out in 2014, so at this point it's almost 5 years old. It'll be 5 years in September. And last year, like I stated with all the other phones, it had iOS 11, and this is one of those phones that completely just sucked on it. I didn't like it on iOS 11. I didn't own one too much at the time. I had it like here and there, but I'll tell you right now, I don't really think it was too stable. It was just really hit or miss. I guess it really never missed at that point, but I'll tell you that midway through 2018, we actually got iOS 12, which actually cleaned out a lot, and it made it a little bit more stable. It made it a little bit more snappier, and it just made it feel a little bit better overall, but there were still some bugs, and the biggest crucial thing that really made me upset was that group FaceTime was not ported over to the iPhone 6 Plus, iPhone 6, or iPhone 5S. Honestly, the 5S is whatever, but I personally thought, and I proved, that the 6 Plus and the iPhone 6, even the 5S, could support group video calls, but for some reason, Apple didn't support those, which is just another thing. Maybe it's like planned obsolescence, I don't know, but you can do group FaceTime calls or whatever, but just no group video calls, which is whatever. And I thoroughly tested the iOS 12 updates on my second channel for the iPhone 6 Plus. If you want to check that out, links below. I haven't really updated that channel in a while besides that mixtape I dropped, which was fire. It'll be one of the first links in the description. Check out that mixtape. Let me know what you guys think about it. You can even stream it on SoundCloud, but that kind of brings us to where we're at now. And looking around the body, I'll tell you that this phone looks like nothing we've seen today. Totally joking. Every single person in this world probably has seen an iPhone 6 Plus. Not even any iPhone. The iPhone 6 Plus specifically. I know you've seen one in your life. It's the familiar design. I say that every single time. I don't know why. Now, surprisingly, this was the biggest iPhone at the time, and it's still a humongous phone. The screen is 5.5 inches. It's 1080p, and I actually like that resolution a lot. 1080p should be the standard. If you go below that, it should just automatically be declined. But I like the display on this. It's not the best. It's still like pretty low, and it doesn't look the best, but you know what? At the time, it was decent, and it got the job done. The build quality, you know what? It doesn't seem that bad. I know a lot of people just hate on it all the time. Me too. I hate it, but in the hand, it doesn't feel too bad. But this phone was just horrible because it bent super easily. But for me, when I owned it, I never really had any bending issues, so I really didn't have to worry about it. I put a case on it and I never bent it, so maybe they fixed the bending with a software update, I don't know. Totally joking, that was a joke. But that's pretty much the exterior. Obviously, we have a single camera on the back. I'll get into that in a second. We do still have the headphone jack, which is pretty cool. I know a lot of people out there can't move on, so that's there for the people who don't want to move on with their life or their relationships. You still have the headphone jack there, so shout out to you guys. Now, turning it on, we actually do have iOS 12.1.2, which is the latest version right now. But if you're watching this video a couple months down the line, obviously like 12.1.3 is going to come out, or 12.2 or whatever. But that's the latest version right now. And overall, like I stated, it's stable, but it doesn't really mean it's super fast, okay? It's fairly sluggish still, you know, which isn't really an iOS problem. It's more so the hardware problem with this phone, okay? But it's stable enough. But looking forward, I'm 99% positive this is the last update this phone will get, okay? It'll stop at iOS 12. I know a lot of people are going to be like, well, the iPhone 5S got iOS 12, so it's going to get one more year. Man, we are lucky the iPhone 5S got iOS 12. I knew there was no way Apple would keep it on iOS 11, so they wanted all the phones to be upgraded. And I'll tell you, iOS 12 is not a bad place for the iPhone 6 Plus to stop. If it kept going to the new redesign that iOS 13 is supposed to bring, it will immediately, like, nobody would be able to use their 6 Plus. It'll be like what they did with the iPhone 4S on iOS 9.3.5. So, you know what? For my 6 Plus users currently, iOS 12, in my opinion, I think is a good place to stop. I know that's stupid. I was a 6 Plus. I currently still own a 6 Plus. I make videos about it on the iOS versions, but for most of my users, I think 13 would just not be able to run that well on the iPhone 6 Plus. So moving on with the performance, I spent too much time talking about that. I think the performance is definitely average, probably below average. I know people don't like hearing that. Here's the thing. It has the Apple A8 chip, which that in and of itself isn't that bad, okay? It has a dual core processor, and actually the Apple A8 chip is the same one that's in the HomePod, so that's kind of surprising in case you didn't know. Where was I? Oh, the dual-core processor. It has 1 gig of RAM, okay? That's probably the worst part about this phone is the RAM itself. iOS 12, like I said, may have sped the phone up a little bit, but regardless, this phone was going to be slow anyway, only because of the RAM that was inside. It just cannot handle what it is. Maybe if this phone had 2 gigs of RAM, it would have been that much better. But you know what? Whatever you're going to do with it, it'll do the job. It'll get you from point A to point B, but it'll take you a very, very long time. And you're going to actually feel like you have a sluggish phone. I'm one of those people, I'm like, who cares if the iPhone XS Max has the Apple whatever 100 chip? It doesn't matter. If the phone functions and it's noticeably fast in my hand, that's all that matters. The iPhone 6 Plus is just not one of those phones. It might look like it can handle whatever. It just can't. I'm sorry. Even gaming, I'll tell you, it's such a strange phone, okay? It can play the games, casual gaming, light gaming, it'll handle that. When you go to heavier games, it's, again, kind of hit or miss. They're sluggish. There are notable skipped frames here and there, but it is playable. And I guess that might matter to you. If the phone just plays the games, that's all that matters. But if you're not even a heavy user, then it really doesn't matter too much. What I will say with the overall performance is it's very, very average. I don't use that term lightly. It is very average. I don't even mean that in a good way. It's definitely on the lower end of things when considering where we're at now. Now the cameras, I'm just going to spend a second talking about them. They're very, very average as well, okay? It has very basic features and functions. It's an 8 megapixel back camera and a 1.2 megapixel front facing camera. It's not amazing. They're not great. But like I said, it will get the job done. Taking photos is fine. There's no live photos. There's no portrait mode. There's no 4K. But it's not that bad of quality. The videos you can shoot in 1080p, but don't get this phone thinking you're going to be able to take like amazing quality photos and all these different things. I think if you got this phone in 2014 and comparing to those phones, it's not that bad. And maybe if you get this phone now, you know what, maybe you can still get some good shots out of it to those people who own it. Maybe it's not bad, but when you compare it to what we have now, that's kind of where we have a problem with. And I always say don't compare phones, this and that. But bro, even when you're not comparing it, you can tell that this camera is just not that good. Even the front camera is like, again, very average. So what I'll tell you is this phone has a camera. It works. It functions as it should. It's very basic though. You're not getting too many features out of it. So overall, I was trying to think of something funny to say. I can't. The overall camera experience is very, very average. Now, one thing that is not average, which is surprising, is the battery life. Okay, this is the good thing about this phone. Because this phone is pretty much clocked at lower speeds and it only has 1 gig of RAM, Apple A chip, it's really not that performance heavy. It's pretty good in battery life, but when you tie that with the pretty large iPhone battery that it has, which is 2,900 milliamp hours, you will get a pretty decent battery life out of it, okay? And you know what? In my opinion, I'll just say this out. I think iOS 11 had better battery life overall than iOS 12. And I think iOS 12, it might have fixed things here and there, but it did decrease the battery life just a little bit, okay? I'm not going to say it totally ruined the phone, you can't use it. I'm just saying that the battery life just decreased a little bit, okay? It's not that big of a deal. Maybe overall, maybe like a net like 4 or 5%, maybe like 7. But again, at the end of the day, I would rather have a way more stable phone that actually functions and it has a couple more features than a phone that lasts 5 to 7% longer, but I'll probably end up using that battery life to make my phone work and rebooting it over and over again. So I'll definitely say that the battery life is definitely a pro for this thing, but I would check the battery health. Apple's not doing their $29 battery replacement, which sucks really badly, but you know what, you can always just replace it yourself because this phone is pretty easy to repair, and I'll go into that in a second. Now, some notable things to note, okay, it does have Touch ID, which I noted earlier. It's Touch ID 1, it's not that bad. There's no water resistance, so that might suck to a lot of people who are always by the water or something, so kind of keep that in mind. Now, I kind of mentioned this like 20 seconds ago, but the parts to repair this thing are super, super cheap. So if you crack the screen, you can replace it yourself. It's fairly easy. If you crack the camera, you can replace it. If you break something, it's really, really easy to fix and maintain this phone, which is important to note when you're talking about older technology, because older technology tends to break more often and have more faulty parts usually. That's not always the case, but sometimes. Now, the biggest problem with this phone was the bending issue, okay? Now, for me, like I said, it's never happened to me. I'm pretty sure if you throw a case on it, you'll be fine. But for the majority of people, you know what, that's going to be a huge issue, and that's pretty much what Apple was remembered with for a long time. And even now with the iPad Pro's bending, this is what they most closely tie that to. So is the iPhone 6 Plus still worth it in 2019? Okay, this is what I'll say. If you currently own an iPhone 6 Plus, you could probably keep it for the remainder of the software support that it has. So probably in like May, that's when it's going to get its last iOS 12 update. That's probably what I'll be like, okay, just like stop owning it. There's really no point anymore. You've made your point. You can keep this phone for forever. Just go upgrade to the next thing. But outside of that group, I would not recommend this phone at all. You are going to be doing yourself a disservice by getting this phone. And you know what? I'm not saying this phone is bad or horrible. It definitely hurt Apple a lot, but it it was also the best selling iPhone ever, so kind of weird. And it's not even because of an age thing, you know, if this phone even came out like last year, I would still be super upset. It's just the performance of this phone just isn't up to par, even like for what it's costing right now. You know what, these things are still going for over $150, which is insane for the base model. You can get an iPhone 6s for like less than that. I spent like $100 on my iPhone 6s, and that thing runs 100 times better than the iPhone 6 Plus, and that thing even has Force Touch, which is just another pro for it. And even if you're lucky, you might even be able to get like an iPhone 6s Plus for like $20 more here and there, and that phone is 50 times better than the iPhone 6 Plus as well. So what I'll tell you is, I would not recommend anybody buying an iPhone 6 Plus anymore, okay? But the successor of these phones, the 6s and 6s Plus, are still amazing phones, and they're still priced very, very competitively for what they offer, okay? Like I said, you can get them for less than $200. They're around that same price point. If you want any more information, definitely check out the double eye swipes I did for those, the Is It Still Worth It, for those videos. But you can definitely buy the 6S and 6S Plus on tons of other websites that offer those things like eBay and whatever. But I would recommend getting certified refurbished because they usually come with warranties. They're much easier to get, and they sell directly through Amazon. So I will link the cheapest ones I find on Amazon in the links below, the first links. Go ahead and buy them. And every time you do buy one, it actually helps the channel out too. So it means so much if you actually buy not only your phones and everything, but just buy anything through that link. It always comes around and helps me make more banger videos like this and more giveaways and things like that. So that's pretty much where we're going to end this off. If you guys have any questions or anything, leave it down in the comment section below. Hit that like button, that'll mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. Every single subscriber we get really does count, so it'll mean so much if you guys could hit that. Also check out the other links down in the description as well. My Twitter, my Instagram, my second channel, my mixtape, all those things are linked down below. I would really appreciate if you guys could go and check it out. But more importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.